The Capitals fall to the Minnesota Wild in the shootout.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $250 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Caps taking on the Wild, and, well, let's be honest, things got pretty wild, but ultimately the Capitals fall in the shootout. What went wrong? I'll talk about that a little bit later. I am going to go ahead and make some lemonade out of the lemons that game was tonight, and talk about Alex Ovechkin and the great night that he had. A little bit later, I will talk about other key offensive contributions. And then in the final segment, I'll talk about Ryan Leonard, huge at the World Junior Championships. But just to get it going here, the Capitals making it to the shootout. That is not something that we see the Capitals do too often this season. And so for it to even get to that point, you knew it was going to be against a big opponent. And the Minnesota Wild definitely gave the Capitals more than they could handle. All things considered, the Capitals pick up a point, not a total loss. They made it to the shootout. So like I say, it wasn't a blowout, but at the end of the day, the Minnesota Wild were just that much better. I don't think that there's any two ways about it. Just to kind of recap big things off the top that really stood out, that kind of set the wheel wobbling for the Caps, was Charlie Lindgren. Now, to be clear here, he made some big saves, but he also made some pretty big gaffes in the game as well. So kind of just a tough go around here for Charlie Lindgren this season at points, scoring on his own net and kind of getting behind the net and out of position. That I don't want to say it's been a bad season for Charlie, but it definitely was not one of his better games, I guess I'm going to say tonight. And ultimately you saw some of the offensive firepower really come alive for the Minnesota Wild. And the Wild, to give credit where credit is due, while they were missing quite a few players from the lineup, key players as well. And that's what it was, a fierce battle on the ice, showcasing the grit and skill of 2 of the top teams in the league. And just taking a look at the standings, it's hard when you come off these losses, or shootout losses, if you will. The Capitals now 53 points. The New Jersey Devils 51. That is, as I'm recording this right now, at 11:03 local. So, it's not like, they took a big dip or a big dive. Ultimately, they lost in the shootout, and you just got to brush your shoulders off and get ready for the next one. But right from the beginning, it was trading back and forth. Both teams trading goals back and forth. The Caps had some bright spots. Tom Wilson posting up kind of in front of Marc-Andre Fleury, kind of almost as a screen, and hanging out in front of the net. And guess what? Good things happen as he scored a goal. But the Capitals did have some bright spots with 3 different players finding the back of the net. And that's what I've talked about in this show. A lot different than a Capitals team than we've seen in years before, where it was Alex Ovechkin and, maybe, TJ Oshie and, it depends on how far back you want to go, Alex Simmons, something of that nature, that there are a lot of players up and down the lineup that can score goals on a regular basis. Now, however, they fell short in what I'm going to say was a bit of a nail biter. I guess anytime it makes it to the shootout, it's a bit of a nail biter, losing 4-3 and only managing to grab 1 point in the standings. Now, I'm going to look at this as a glass half full and say, hey, they picked up a point. They could have walked away with nothing. Of course, I would have rather had them walk away and get the win, but that is the way it went. So key moments in the game, like I talked about off the top. And, I don't think that Charlie Lindgren's a bad netminder. I just think that sometimes he has some questionable judgment, and that's what it was. A pivotal moment occurred during a power play when Charlie Lindgren tried to handle the puck behind the net, and he was kind of trying to shoot it away, but a Minnesota Wild player was in proximity and made the most of that. And with Yakov Trenin bearing down on him, Lindgren attempted to make a play, but unfortunately, his mistake led to Trenin scoring and putting the Wild up 2-1. Now, the moment was reminiscent of our earlier blunder against the Lightning, where Lindgren accidentally scored on his own goal. And I don't want this to be, like a negativity highlight reel for Charlie Lindgren, but they're not some great moments. And you got to think to a certain extent, are these the things that are kind of, creeping in a little bit on him? Like, the pressure of, is it going to be Logan Thompson? Is it going to be me? What is the long-term future on this team? That I don't know if that's the way he's thinking, but, you take a look at it, both of these netminders entering into contract years, rather, that who's going to get the extension? I know what Elliot Friedman said, and I know what I see, and I know that was the Capitals saying the right thing, but I ultimately see the Caps picking one netminder. You got to think to a certain extent with how well Logan Thompson is playing, that maybe is kind of starting to creep in a little bit as far as, am I the right guy in this whole situation? But let's next talk about Alex Ovechkin, a bright spot in this game for sure. And one of the highlights of the game was as Alex Ovechkin doing Alex Ovechkin things after missing, a substantial amount of time late in the second period. He launched a powerful shot through traffic during a 4-minute power play, leveling the game at 2-2. Now, Ovechkin has been back here for a bit, but, to have him back in the lineup, there was a lot of questions. Is there going to be a leg there? Is there going to be any setbacks? That has not been the case. And this goal marked Ovechkin's 18th goal of the season and highlighted his resurgence. That who's back? Ovi's back with 3 goals in his last 4 games since coming back. And I'm going to be honest here. I did have quite a bit of questions as well as what kind of Ovi were we going to see? Are we going to see the Ovi that started last season slow, or are we going to see the Ovi that started this season on fire? Quite something. And the interesting thing, and I've talked about this on the show before, is it seems like certain players have certain teams' numbers, or they play very well in a certain environment. And well, Alex Ovechkin plays very well against the Wild. It was his 20th goal in 24 career games against the Wild, showcasing what he can do against Marc-Andre Fleury and the Minnesota Wild. And I know that, Andre Fleury hasn't been there a real long time. Of course, remember him with the Golden Knights and the Pittsburgh Penguins, but it was definitely an interesting statistic. You also hear other interesting statistics about how certain players play well in certain venues. It's just one of those kind of inside analytics that are kind of funny. So as of the game, Ovechkin sits at 871 career goals, now just 24 goals away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record of 894. Can you feel it? I've kind of started to put together a show that, on that monumental game or night or whenever the game has to be. But I think I'm going to have to start to put it together a little bit more in earnest because, well, it seems like he is catching up to Gretzky faster and faster. Something that seemed like it was way, way far away. Well, it's getting a whole lot closer than we thought. But an interesting dynamic, quite a history between Ovi and Marc-Andre Fleury. We remember in the Stanley Cup, we remember the back and forth with the Pittsburgh Penguins. His goal against Marc-Andre Fleury marked the 41st time Ovi has scored on him, setting a new record for the most goals by one player against a single goaltender since the expansion era. Probably, a feather in the hat for Ovi, probably something that Marc-Andre Fleury's not super happy about. But at the end of the day, Andre Fleury and Ovechkin duking it out on the ice, those are some of the moments that I'll remember years from now. So, that is what I'm going to walk away from this. They picked up a point. They ultimately did not get the win, but just things to learn. Charlie Lindgren, you got to think that he is going to be looking back on that and saying, hey, got to do this different, got to do that different. But, these are all real-time scenarios happening in real time that I don't think that he went back to play the puck thinking to himself, hey, I'm going to let the Minnesota Wild score right here. It's just maybe exercise a little bit of better judgment in certain situations, just like quarterbacks around the league that sometimes have questionable judgment throwing into traffic. I think you can somewhat lump that into the same category. And I don't know if judgment is something that you can always teach, but something that definitely I think that Lingren will walk away from this game thinking that needs to be improved. All right, so coming up here after the break, it was not all negativity in this game. Don't walk away from this podcast thinking that. There were some key contributions, some highlights by the Capitals. What were those highlights? I'll break them all down straight ahead. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a W. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It is so thrilling. And listen, there is a lot of football. We're coming up on the end of the season here, and some of the games you're more into, some of them you're not. But if you want to have vested interest in all of the games, open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, those games got that much more exciting. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more on FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. So key contributors in this game is there was some offensive firepower by the Capitals. And ultimately, I know what I said earlier in the game, but it went to the shootout. So definitely some weaknesses on the Wild, some weaknesses on the Capitals, but offensive back and forth, a fun game. Ultimately, I wish it would have resulted in a win by the Caps, but let's highlight some of the key contributions in Dylan Strome. Dylan Strome contributed significantly by providing his team-leading 30th assist of the season on Ovechkin's goal. So Dylan Strome, I've sing his praises on the show all the time, but he has been a key contributor on this team, whether it's playing on the first line, other than taking Alex Ovechkin's game to the next level. Dylan Strome has definitely been that player that's picked up the torch from Nick Backstrom, and to have that team leading 30th assist of the season, well, that speaks volumes of what kind of player he is, and ultimately why I'm happy that he's on the Capitals. In a lot of ways, I'm really happy that the Blackhawks set him aside. So the second line in particular, and this is not a big change, as the second line has been pretty lights out for the Capitals, featuring Protas, Pierre-Luc Dubois, and Tom Wilson. Protas displayed slick puck handling. Dubois applied consistent pressure, and Wilson's aggressive forechecking paid off as he scored his 15th goal by pouncing on a rebound off Rasmus Sandin point shot. So quite a game, quite a second line for the Capitals. And you take a look at Tom Wilson, who has been huge this year. And, like I talked about off the top, and you hear the coaches in the NHL talk about it all the time, hang out in front of the net, good things will happen. Pepper him with shots. What happened? Wilson was kind of setting up that screen up front. Oh, there's a puck. I guess I'm just going to drive it home. And there you go. A great goal by Mr. Tom Wilson. Martin Fehervary, who's been, a bit dinged up here as of late. Also a great game by Marty. He scored his first goal of the season thanks to an assist by, well, who else? PLD. We know how huge he's been for this team, showcasing the second line strong play in the third period and giving the Caps a short-lived 3-2 lead. Now, Fehervary has been particularly effective against the Wild, racking up 4 points in just 7 career games against them. So again, like I talked about before, Ovechkin, good against the Wild. Martin Fehervary, good against the Wild. I don't really know what it's about at the end of the day, but Dubois has been heating up as well, extending his point streak to 7 points over the last 8 games. So, the second line, I don't think it's, if you want to look at it as a step down, no, that second line is the one that's getting it done. That's the work boots line out there that drives the engine as far as the offensive production is concerned. So quite an outing for the second line and for the Capitals in general. Just in bounces didn't go their way. If it would have went here or there, I'd be talking to you about a Capitals win. But ultimately, those were the highlights. The Capitals did get some key contributions from, not players that you necessarily get offensive production from. Talking about Martin Fehervary, that and other players on the team that are the steady eddies, the key contributors, elevating their game to already a higher level. Talking Dylan Strome, talking PLD, this team is one to be reckoned with. All right, so coming up here after the break, I will talk about the great outing by Ryan Leonard at the World Juniors. This is some exciting hockey as we look ahead, as these are going to be the future faces of the Capitals. In particular, Ryan Leonard figures to be a key contributor. When, might you ask, Dan? Well, I think it's going to be next year. I'll give you my thoughts on him straight ahead. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps you lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings savings together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. And I was guilty of that. I was paying for 2 streaming services that I didn't even realize I was paying for. And Rocket Money said, hey, you probably don't need to do that. Why not cancel one of those and save yourself some money? And I said, thank you, Rocket Money. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. One more time, rocketmoney.com/locked-on. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show, Locked On Capitals, is to subscribe, follow, all of that on the Twitter feeds, but also to really help grow the show, make sure and subscribe to us on the YouTube channel, like, comment, share. It all helps with the algorithm, and I thank you so much. All right, in this next segment here, we're going to talk about Ryan Leonard in his key contributions at the World Juniors. And listen, we know the story. We know the backstory on Ryan Leonard, that former GM Brian McClellan did say that he could join the team whenever he wanted to. Or it was not breakdown day. It's when Evgeny Kuznetsov went into the players' assistance program, of all places to bring this topic up at the press conference. I believe it was Tarek El-Bashir bringing it up to former GM Brian McClellan, saying, How is Ryan Leonard doing? When do we think we'll see him on this team? And at the time, Brian McClellan said, now. I told him at the end of last year he could join this team. He said, but I don't want to push him. So what happened with Ryan Leonard is there was kind of a back and forth. He talked to his brother, his family members, but his brother, who also plays in hockey as well. And he did the thing that he wanted to do, and that was play another season at Boston College to see if he can accomplish great things. And he also wanted another crack on the World Junior, the international stage. So that is definitely what we're seeing pay at Boston College, but also at the World Juniors. And for me, as a Capitals fan, a very exciting thing to think at, kind of peering into the future. Oftentimes on the show, I talk about Leonard, I talk about Crystal, that it is going to be exciting. I think starting next year, this team will be a little bit younger and a lot more skilled in a lot of different regards. But Ryan Leonard shines big time at the 2025 World Junior Championships, and that's what we're diving into, is that exciting action from the 2025 World Junior Championships, where our very own Ryan Leonard shined bright for Team USA. It was a thrilling game to watch in the quarterfinal matchup against Switzerland. Leonard recorded his first multi-goal game, helping propel the team to an impressive 7-2 victory. This guy is going to be offensive firepower for this team big time. The question, of course, is always, well, where is he going to fit in? This team looks pretty good this year. How are they going to fit a guy like Ryan Leonard into the mix? Again, my knee-jerk reaction is that I think that Mangiapane is good, but I definitely think that Ryan Leonard is going to be an upgrade. That's what I see. You could make the argument that, hey, the third line's pretty weak, or the fourth line. I don't see Ryan Leonard being a third or fourth line player personally. And, we've seen Mangiapane on the first line. I guess it's all semantics at the end of the day. But I ultimately see Ryan Leonard aimed for bigger things with the Capitals next season. And you got to think they're going to find a way to shoehorn him in there somewhere. So talking about his impressive stats, as the captain at just 19 years old, Leonard has been a force throughout this tournament. Boasting 6 points and 4 goals and 2 assists in just 5 games. Quite a statement. That's averaging more than a point per game. I'm going to go ahead and say that is quite remarkable. And standout performance. Let's talk about, I talked about what kind of player he could potentially be. Let's not guess. Let's not spitball. Let's talk about his performance. Leonard kicked things off by scoring the first goal of the game at just 11:35 in the first period. He made a brilliant pay by intercepting a pass in the neutral zone, then drove toward the net and skillfully lifted a forehand shot over the Swiss netminder. It was that kind of move that gets me excited. You can kind of envision him in a red Capitals jersey doing something just like that. I think it's going to be very exciting. So continuing the momentum, the excitement, as he scored another goal late in the second period during a PP. This time, he finished off a beautiful tic-tac-toe passing sequence. What a display of great teamwork. Just on display out on the ice with Gabe Perreault, who's another big name in the future. So quite a performance by Ryan Leonard, showcasing what he has on the big stage. And that's his priorities right now. My priorities are not his priorities, and his priorities are not mine. He's a 19-year-old guy killing it at this level. And it's going to be interesting. What happens with Boston College? Could he join the Capitals at the end of the season? Now, despite facing some serious physical challenges, the fact that he may have broke his nose, taking a high stick to the nose and later being struck in the face with a puck, Leonard did not back down. A weaker person might have cowered. If you're a hockey player, at the end of the day, you got to be a bit of a tough guy. He logged 16 minutes of ice time, firing off 8 shots on goal, the whole time while dealing with significant facial swelling that hinted at a potential broken nose. I'm going to go ahead and say it. Tough as nails. So Leonard's resilience in the post-game chat, Leonard addressed his injury saying, quote, "Nose, yeah, unlucky. Probably get it checked out after this. I don't know. We'll see what happens," unquote. That was a post-game chat with Flow Hockey. Now, even with the pain, he was named USA's player of the game. Really working on his resume. Of course, we'd like to see him on the Capitals right now, but he is making a resume. So by the time he gets here, the accomplishments, they'll be stunning. Now, and despite being booed and predominantly a Canadian crowd at Ottawa's Canada Tire Center, Leonard took it in stride, saying, quote, "At the end of the game, when I got that award and you hear the boos, it kind of just made me smile, honestly. It's cool to be hated, unquote. And you got to love that attitude that you did really, really well when you're getting booed just based on your great performance. Now, Leon Mugli, another key contributor on the other side. We have Leon Mugli, who wrapped up his tournament after facing Leonard and Team USA. Mugli managed to record 3 assists in just 5 games. Now, this was a major victory. Team USA is set to advance to the semifinals of the championship. Exciting times for Leonard and the Caps community. As I will talk about later here about, I talked about Mugli, I talked about Leonard, but to talk that the future is bright for the Capitals would be an understatement. A lot of excitement surrounds this team, and as Capitals fans, you should be very excited. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.